There has been an enormous debate raging across both traditional and social media over the last 2 weeks regarding what is termed the Petroyuan, or the Petro renminbi. And this is a concept based upon the petrodollar. And essentially, just shortly, what this is if you wanted to buy any energy in the Middle East, you had to pay for it in dollars. You couldn't buy it in euro or pounds or renminbi. And now there has been an enormous amount of media reports that Iran and maybe even other countries are saying that if you want access to our energy, you have to pay us in RMB, not in dollars anymore. So there's this discussion about what this may or may not mean to the US dollar as the dominant currency globally. This is nothing new. This has been ongoing for a number of years. I've even talked a little bit about this in previous videos. China, again, if we go back to my comments of energy is life and that China wanted to ensure that it had access to energy, the very first, well, I should say, the second important aspect was being able to pay in local currency. China didn't want to have US dollars to be able to access the energy. They wanted to be able to pay for it in renminbi. And beginning probably around 5 years ago, whether it was with Saudi Arabia, with Kuwait, with Iraq, with Yemen, they were finding success. Beijing was finding success in being able, not completely, but to be able to invoice their purchases of energy in RMB. Why was this important, though, was not simply about paying in renminbi. It was about the power of the US dollar and that the US dollar was being weaponized by Washington. There's a concept in the US dollar system globally. It's called the New York Correspondent Banks. It's a group of banks where every single transaction that you make, if it's made in US dollars, it goes through those banks. They can track it. They can watch it. The way Washington describes it is, we can keep an eye on all transactions. If you can keep an eye on all transactions, you can also stop all transactions. And somewhat unironically, the first time this was done was in 2012, and it was done against Iran. The United States sanctioned Iran and said, you can no longer, and by you I mean everybody around the world, including China, could no longer purchase Iranian oil in dollars. Well, they said you could no longer purchase Iranian oil, but they meant in dollars. China found an opportunity and said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to buy it in renminbi. The Iranians said, fine. But the most critical two elements were, first, the Chinese created their own, call it New York Correspondent Bank system. It's called SWIFT, if you will. But in China, it's called CIPS, the China Interbank Payment System. And it's all of the Chinese banks linked together so that if you pay them in, let's say, Tehran or in Baghdad to ICBC, it goes directly to the banks here. So you were completely moved outside of the entire US dollar system. No longer could you be sanctioned. No longer could you be monitored. But there was one final element, and this is where people are beginning to understand the real, I think, impact, power, if you will, that has grown out of this for Beijing. If you have renminbi left over, you don't want to hold that renminbi. What are you going to do with it? You don't need renminbi if you're Iran or Saudi Arabia or Argentina. So China opened up its gold market. And it said, any renminbi that you have left over, you can come here and you can change your renminbi into gold and we'll give you the gold. It's called gold settlement, and it's critical. So the Petroyuan, as it's being now called, is more than just about the ability for various countries around the world to pay for energy in RMB. It's the entire system, the telegraph system, the CIPS system, the gold settlement system. Right now, it is just on the margins, but every single day, it becomes more adopted by more countries, by more companies. And I think with the conflict ongoing in the Middle East, This is going to drive adoption to use RMB much more in the years ahead.